guys, my name is Iasmina and welcome back to my channel. I make videos all about books, book recommendations, writing, and the publishing world, so make sure you subscribe and like this video so you don't miss out on any content. In today's video, we're gonna talk all about novel length. We're gonna tackle a couple of questions. First of all, how long your novel should be based on genre. I'm also gonna give you some examples in those genres and some exceptions to the normal ranges. I'm also gonna be giving you some tips for keeping in mind word count when you're writing your book. And I'm also going to show you how to find out how long a published book is, how to find the word count of a published book. So if that sounds like something you're interested in learning more about, please stay tuned for the rest of this video. Okay, let's talk book or novel classifications. So a novel is any manuscript that is 40,000 words or longer. Okay, so anything above 40,000 words is considered a novel. A novella is anything between 10,000 and 40,000 words. A short story is anything between 1 to 8,000 words. And then we also have something like flash fiction, which is shorter than 1,000 words. That's usually the main categories we have. So flash fiction, short fiction, novella, novel. Alright, so first of all, let's discuss why it is important to keep in mind word count, and especially genre-specific word count when writing your book. This is pretty much because we as readers and the publishing industry has general requirements when it comes to how long certain books should be. And this all goes into, reader expectation. If a reader is looking to read a new fantasy novel, they expect that fantasy novel to be of certain length. If they pick it up and the book turns out to be 30,000 words, so maybe 100 pages, they will probably be pretty disappointed, because when someone wants to read a big fat epic fantasy book, they expect a certain amount of pages. They expect to be reading a long, immersive world and book that they can spend hours and hours reading. Now that's obviously an extreme example, but I just want you to keep in mind that it does matter based on genre and what readers and publishers especially expect of a certain book. They expect that book to be in certain margins for it to meet reader expectations and market expectations. A lot of this goes back in the day when printing books was very expensive. To be fair, it is still pretty expensive, so the more pages a book has, obviously it is more expensive to print. So if you're thinking of self-publishing, that's also something to keep in mind, that the longer your book is, it will be more expensive to print, so you will have to pay more for printing that book, and therefore you'll have to price that book in physical form much higher than if it was a shorter book. Now, word count in general is something good to keep in mind as you're writing the first drafts of your book, but you shouldn't worry too much. Everything can be changed and edited down or bulked up in revision, so don't worry too much when you're first starting out writing your book, but I'm just gonna give you some general examples of how long your book should be based on different genres, so make sure you know what genre you're writing. That's also very important. Also, just to quickly mention, if you want a written down version of all of these ranges, if it makes it easier for you to follow that, I will also leave a link to the blog post of this video where I'll write this info down so that it's easier for you to just maybe quickly copy and paste and put it somewhere than listening to me talk about it. But please stay and listen to me talk about it, because I'm gonna share some interesting things with you. Alright, so how long should your novel be? Alright, so the first genre I want to talk about is YA. Now, I myself write in the YA, under the YA umbrella, and so I know most about this genre. So first, let me talk about YA contemporary. Books for young readers, for young adults, usually range between 60 to 80,000 words. Now, of course, that is a broad range, yes, but it doesn't really matter if you're on the shorter end or the longer end. But in general, your YA contemporary novel should probably fall somewhere between that range. So I'll just give you some examples of that. So a very famous YA contemporary book, The Fault in Our Stars, is around 67,000 words. And I just wanted to show you physically so you can see sort of what that means. Now, I will talk about formatting and how that can change the appearance of a book regardless of word count at the end of this video, but just to give you an idea, this book is about 67,000 words. Another YA contemporary book is Radio Silence by Alice Osman, and this is 79,000 words, so this is almost 10,000 words longer. And I don't know, obviously one is a paperback, one is a hardback, but maybe you can see that this is a little thicker than this one. Next, let's talk about YA fantasy. Now, obviously for fantasy in general, you would expect a longer word count, but since this still falls under the YA umbrella, you should think about making it on the shorter range of fantasy word counts. So in general, a YA fantasy should be anywhere from 80 to 100,000 words, but you know, it can be higher than 100,000. But keep in mind that if this is your first book and you're trying to query agents to get traditionally published, if your book is over 100,000 words, especially a lot over 100,000 words, they won't like that very much. Usually they prefer under 100,000 for your, if this is your debut or the first in a series. That's pretty important. Later on you have more leeway when it comes to that. So I'll just show you a YA fantasy. A very popular YA fantasy is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and this comes in at 113,000 words. And this is kind of the thickness of what that looks like. But this is the first in the series, and if you know the series, I can't be bothered to go pick up the other ones, but they get longer and longer, so you have more leeway once you're further into the series, once you're an established author. But generally, as your first book, and especially as the first in the series, you want to stay between those guidelines, or as close to those guidelines as you can. Another example, this is YA, I guess dystopian. Obviously The Hunger Games, this is 99,000 words, so just below that 100,000 limit. It's not really a limit, but you get my point. Alright, next up is epic fantasy and adult fantasy in general. Now this of course tends to be a bit on the longer side. What I said before about big fat fantasy books, we like that, and so as a general rule, again this is very general, you want that to be anywhere between 90,000 and about 250,000 words. An example is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, which comes in at 256,000 words. So again, a bit on the end of that scale, but that's just to give you an example. This actually doesn't look that big because I think the writing in this is also pretty small. But again, we'll talk about formatting later. Okay, let's go on through a few more genres. Romance novels, so this is more adult romance novels or chick lit or things like that. Again, a nice range would be anywhere between 50 and 90,000 words. I don't read a lot of romance, so I don't have much to show you there, but I'm sure you can find many examples online. Next, let's talk about thriller / mystery. A range for that would be 70 to 150,000. Again, I know that is a very, very high range. An example that I have is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, and that is 150,000 or thereabouts. So again, a lot of these very popular books actually tend to be somewhere on the end of these spectrums. Again, they are very popular books, and most of these books are not the first books these authors ever published. So again, please keep that in mind, that if it's your debut, it's going to probably be on the lower end, or preferably it will be. It just makes it a lot easier for agents when you query them to know that you know the standards in publishing, and then of course you can have more leeway to write longer books later on, but usually they like seeing books on a shorter end of the spectrum, or you know, in the range, in the normal range. For literary fiction, the range is between 80 and 120,000 words, something like that. We also have historical fiction, which usually is over 100,000, but you know, between 100,000 and 150,000 words. Those are also kind of epic books, so they tend to be longer. An example I have is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr, which is a historical fiction novel, and it is 129,000 words. And the last genre I want to mention is middle grade, and okay, specifically middle grade fantasy, and that is also between 40,000 and 80,000 words, that range. And an example I have is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The first Harry Potter book is 78,000 words, and the first Percy Jackson book, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, is 80,000 words. Alright, so those were the genres that I wanted to talk about. Those are the genres that are most familiar to me, but of course if I haven't mentioned the genre that you're writing in, I'm really sorry, and please do your own research because it might be something more specific that I haven't thought about. But now let's talk about some tips in regards to word count. So as I mentioned in the beginning, if this is one of the first drafts that you're writing, don't worry too much about how long it is, because at the end of the day, your novel should feel natural. It should be as long as it needs to be. And this is something you will probably learn as you go along, as you write more books, as you read more books. Another important tip is to make sure you read a lot of books in your genre, because then you'll already kind of get a feel of how long a book like that should be. And when you're reading other published books and when you're reading your own, you will kind of realize if it's shorter or longer than it should be. But at the end of the day, if it feels natural, if you've included all of the subplots and all the descriptions without it bogging you down as a reader, then it's probably fine. And as you saw, a lot of these ranges are quite high, so, you know, try not to worry too much. Because I think most of the time, if you don't go too crazy with too many words or too little words, then you should be fine. So the second tip I kind of already talked about is just read books in your genre and look at comparative titles to your book and figure out how long those books are, and I'll tell you how in just a second. And again, figure out the pacing. If your own book feels a bit short or a bit long than the books that you read in your genre, then try to fix that a little bit so that it feels more similar to those. And my third tip is watch the formatting, because oh my gosh, formatting changes everything. Like the way you format your novel for print, anything from margins to font size to even the actual font used can make a huge difference to how many pages your book will be. So even if you have 40,000 words, if you choose a specific font or a bigger font, or you put a lot of margins, a lot of spacing between the lines, you can make that stretch to 40 pages or more, which would normally be like an 80,000 word book. So that is very important to keep in mind, especially this is more important if you're self-publishing, because then you'll probably have more control over the formatting of your book. But just remember that it's super important how the actual print book is formatted, and that can make such a difference of how short or long the book is. So that's actually the reason why we measure books in word count and not in number of pages, because that can be anything, that can be manipulated very easily, and that is not an accurate representation of how the book is, of how long the book is. Okay, and the last thing I want to show you is how to find out how long published books are. So if you want to find out the word count of one of your favorite books, or books in your genre that are similar to yours, so you can contrast and compare, I have a few ways that you can do that. First of all, the manual way and the very annoying way is to literally pull out the print book, look at a couple of pages in that book and count every single word on that page, and then calculate the average based on the number of pages. But of course, nobody has time for that, so I'm gonna give you some online solutions as well. And I'm actually going to show you that on my computer, because it's easier to just show you exactly how to search for that. Okay, so here we are at my computer. So I'm gonna show you two websites today. The first one is called rbookfind.com. I guess it stands for Accelerated Reader Book Finder. Now, when you first go on this website, it will ask you to submit if you're a student or a professional, whatever. I just clicked on student and then it will let me get in. And basically, let's just search for Paper Towns. This is something I've searched for before. This is a novel by John Green, and we can find it here. And look, it says the word count. Now, I'm not sure where it gets this information from, but from my research as well, it does seem like it's around the actual word count. Of course, it might be a little bit higher or lower, but just as a general reference, I think this is a useful tool. So, okay, let's try another one. I also searched for The Name of the Wind, for example, to get some word counts for this video. So you can see here, this says 255,000, so almost 256,000. Okay, so you won't find every single book in here, but basically if the book is popular, you'll probably find it on this website. Of course, I will leave the link to this down below. And then the second website I want to talk about is called wordcounters.com. And basically this is a guy who made this website where if you input the book title here, it'll search for it if it has an audiobook and basically calculate the word count based on the length and speed of the audiobook narration, which is interesting. So again, let's search for Paper Town so we can compare. Oh, all right. Well, it turns out this website can only handle a few calls per day. So maybe it's not the best thing to use. I didn't know about this, so I think now no one can use this website anymore today. So sorry, anyone who's trying to get this website to work on the 7th of April, 2020. So just keep that in mind, that you only have, I think I searched for maybe 5 or 6 books. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, when you'll see this video, you'll probably be fine. So just try it out. But this is also a very useful website. So it has, you can see different genres here, and then you can see books in the genre. So you don't have to search for them. So for example, you know, what is 50 in the 50,000 range, 70,000 range, 80,000 range, and more, of course. So Twilight has 118,000. So this is a very useful tool regardless, but just keep in mind that there is a limit of how many searches you can make per day, apparently. Alright guys, so there you have it. Those were all of my tips in regards to novel length. I hope this was useful and I hope this answered some of the questions that you may have on this topic. If they did, or if you have anything else to add that might be useful to me and to anyone else watching this video, please leave all of that in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe so you can get more content just like this. Otherwise, hope you have a great day and I'll see you next time. Bye!